All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. As people chime in here, we will get started in just a second. I feel like I have so many tabs open that like everything is freezing, but it is all like frozen on my end, but it should be working in just a second. There we go. Now it's back up. All right. Going live here. Good. Good evening. Thanks so much for joining tonight. We have so much to discuss. Den is here helping with moderation. So if you have comments or questions, leave them in the YouTube chat and we will make sure to get to them in between stories. Go support the channel at patreon.com/Hammett. I appreciate that. And you can always subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. We got a lot to talk about. There is so much happening today. I'm going to go ahead and get started because, as I was telling Den, there's a lot of stories, and I don't know how long each of these are going to take, but there are some big ones going on today. Let me start by talking about something that got no attention, as far as I could tell, in the media today because of everything else that is happening ever, which is that the White House's ridiculously named Task Force to Eradicate Anti-Christian Bias, they released their final report today. And if you're thinking, wait a minute, anti-Christian bias is not a real thing, at least as far as the government is concerned, you would be right, which raises the question of what the hell did this task force discuss and what the hell did they put in their final report? And let me give you a quick spoiler here. Look at the people who are on the task force committee. The task force members include Pam Bondi's replacement, Todd Blanche, a whole bunch of cabinet members, including Pulp Fiction quoting Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., who clearly knows a lot about religious discrimination as much as he knows about health. You got the wrestling lady in there, Mark Wayne. Why not? He's from Oklahoma. He's got to know something about religion, right? Kash Patel is in this group because he's not busy enough jet setting to watch his girlfriend's concerts. I don't know. It's not a great list of people. These are not people who have any real understanding of religious freedom or any issues that might be involved with it. But just to give you some background on this thing, last year, Trump signed an executive order establishing this group, and they really only have one job: talk amongst yourselves and then put out a report summarizing if and how there is anti-Christian bias in the government, and include in that report what should we do about it. And so these cabinet members and other stragglers, they all like passed around their one brain cell to each other over the course of several months. And you could argue whatever they're going to release in a report is symbolic. Like, this is not a law. They're just offering recommendations. And that is true. But in theory, this sort of task force could be useful if you had religious freedom, religious liberty experts chiming in saying, hey, this religious group actually is struggling in this way. And this is something the government could do to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. That would be great. That's not what this group did at all, right? So, anti-Christian bias, does it exist? Well, not really, not in the government. I mean, first of all, Christianity is the most popular religion in the United States, so they have that going for them. They make up 87% of Congress, according to the Pew Research Center. 87% of Congress is some form of Christian. And among Republicans, that number rises to 98%. So if Christians feel like they are being persecuted, who the hell do you think has it so much better than you do, right? Complaining that Christians have it rough is like saying the problem with racism in America is that it really hurts white people. And I would think that's a joke, except that's exactly what the Supreme Court said this week when they eviscerated the Voting Rights Act. So that's very much what these right-wing people believe. Now, when the task force held its first meeting last year and Pam Bondi was leading this charge, this is April of 2025, just look at who they invited to speak to them, to give them suggestions about how Christians were being persecuted. You have Michael Ferris, who is a guy who's pushed to make sure homeschooling parents have no oversight whatsoever because he doesn't care about abuse. You have the guy who's helping run Liberty University. That's a voice we got to hear. Oh, look at that spectrum of it's just a rainbow from white to off-white right there. Kash Patel, why not? Marco Rubio, of course, his dad's a crazy preacher. That's who they invited to talk to them about how people were suffering, right? And you could just imagine what these people are going to say. Like, you know what anti-Christian persecution is? We're not allowed to say Merry Christmas anymore. They're making us say Happy Holidays, even though that's totally not a thing that was ever happening. So I talked about this last September because back in September, they issued a preliminary report on what they were finding. And as I talked about back then, it was mostly a collection of right-wing grievances. They wanted to blame Biden for anti-Christian bias, but when you asked them for examples, their examples were like, well, on their Twitter feed, they said like, Happy Ramadan, and that they considered anti-Christian for some reason. Anyway, they have now issued, as of today, they issued this final report, the 2026 report. You can even see the date at the very bottom here. This is April 30th. And the question is, what are they going to say here? This entire task force report is, look at the top of your screen there, 565 pages. 565 pages, 200 of which are actual substance. The rest is just like copy-pasted emails and whatnot. So what did they find? What are they officially saying counts as anti-Christian bias? Because they've heard all the complaints from people who saw their preliminary report several months ago, right? I want to show you a couple of things that are in here as soon as this scrolls down, which it is. Did I read all 565 pages of this report? I did not. I did read as much as I could of the executive summary and the conclusion and kind of the main points they wanted to bring up. And I do want to show you a couple things here. Look at what they write right up in the introduction. This is literally on page 2. Look at this paragraph at the top of your screen here, because they're really trying to say we live in a Christian nation. Our nation's origin and system of government bear the imprint of a Christian worldview and ethic, even as its laws protect religious pluralism. Christian beliefs, in conjunction with contemporary political thought and economic realities, influenced colonial settlers in their decision to overthrow tyranny and pursue independence. All of that is BS. Yes, there were some Christian founding fathers, a lot of deists, some atheists. You know, there were a lot of people who were not, they would not recognize their faith in the evangelicals of today. But you could see right up in the introduction, they're trying to frame this as we live in a Christian nation, so we got to make sure Christians are treated with, you know, kid gloves everywhere. I also appreciate this bit right here in the next paragraph, because they're laying out, what did the Biden administration do? And they have to admit, there really wasn't discrimination by the Biden administration. The Biden administration generally tolerated religious beliefs that were privately held, but zealously pursued actions to limit Christians' ability to act in accordance with their faith. Sure, right. All right, let's see what they're talking about here, right? And the way they do this is that they have a handful of key findings. And I'm not going to go through all of them. There are 14 key findings. Won't go through all of them. I do want to touch on a couple because this goes to what do they think are the biggest issues facing Christians by the government. Number one, the Biden Department of Justice pursued aggressive prosecutions against nonviolent, pro-life Christian demonstrators under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, but responded less aggressively to violent attacks against pregnancy resource centers. Here is all they are getting at in this particular point. There were Christians who protested outside abortion clinics, as is their right, but they were not like protesting from a safe distance. They were literally blocking access to those clinics so that people who needed to get to them could not get in. That's why they were prosecuted. That's why they were in trouble, because you can't protest in the sense that you're blocking other people from going about their business. So that's not persecution at all. That was Christians behaving badly, the Biden administration taking it seriously, and these people acting like they were going after them because of their religion. So BS right from the start. What about key finding number 2 here? I'm going to scroll down a bit. The Biden FBI investigated, monitored, tracked, and scrutinized traditional Catholics who had engaged in no criminal misconduct. Well, this sounds pretty bad. This sounds like the FBI was going after conservative Catholics for no good reason. And I know I've made a video on this before, but this story is worth hearing because all of what they just said is a lie. Here's what happened. There was an internal FBI memo that pointed out that a guy that they were looking at because they thought he was a potential terror threat, he hung out at a church. This church is not formally a Catholic church. It's not affiliated with the Catholic Church. They call themselves like true Catholics, but the Pope would not say it's a Catholic church. It's like an offshoot. That's not that important, though. They were following him because they had reason to believe he was a threat. And it had turned out that at this church, he appeared to be recruiting people for a potential attack. Sounds scary. That's the sort of guy you want the FBI to monitor. Well, guess what? When a couple of FBI agents wrote up an internal report explaining who this is, why they were following him, what they found, they pointed out that there was a link, possibly, between his extremism and his extremely conservative Catholic religion. But they pointed out, we knew this guy was a problem before we even knew where he was going to church. So those analysts also realized there are other men on the FBI's radar who have similar extremist ideologies and who also belong to a similar church. So maybe there is a tie between all of this. They just said we should investigate this a little more. Now they turn in that memo. It gets to higher ranking FBI officials, and they said, we're not going to release this memo anywhere because it's not adhering to FBI standards. There were some errors in the memo. And also they pointed out, we don't go after people because of their religious beliefs, even though, like I just said, they weren't going after these guys because of their religious beliefs. They were going after these guys because they had reason to believe they were threats. And it just so happened they belonged to this type of church, right? So this draft report, this memo, was never made public. It was just circulating within the FBI. And then somehow it got leaked to a right-wing media outlet, which said, hey, the Biden FBI is going after conservative Catholics. Anyway, that is not anti-Christian bias. That was valid documentation of a potentially dangerous phenomenon. And again, technically speaking, it wasn't even against a Catholic. It was against a dude who pretends to be Catholic but is not. But the DOJ cited it as an example of the Biden administration targeting people of faith. But they left out all the other details I just told you. So that was key finding number 2. Let's look at number 3 here. Pulling this up just a second. Sorry, things are slow today. I think I have 97 tabs up that I'm working my way through, and I don't think this computer can handle it, but we will get there. While I'm waiting for this to load, the third one is that the Biden IRS investigated churches because of what their pastors preached and Christian organizations because they applied biblical teachings to daily life. Basically saying the Biden IRS targeted churches. And you know what they're talking about here. They're talking about the Johnson Amendment. And they're saying the IRS went after these Christian churches, and none of that is valid either. You could see it right here. If I could scroll up here, that's key finding number 3. But again, I've made so many videos about this at this point. We have documentation. ProPublica has written about it, that right-wing pastors constantly violate the Johnson Amendment by promoting political candidates from the pulpit, and they face absolutely zero consequences from it. There is no evidence of the IRS targeting churches because of what the pastors preach. You think the IRS is going after your church because the pastor said abortion is wrong or same-sex relationships are a sin? Doesn't happen. Totally a lie. I also want to point out that in this report, they say the IRS investigated churches. They don't say they punished churches. They say they investigated churches. And I don't know why that's a problem. The IRS should be investigating churches if they believe there's a reason to go after them. But if the investigation comes up empty, so be it. Investigation is not a problem. And this whole thing that they went after these churches because they applied biblical teachings to daily life, bullshit. The report actually says the IRS got an application from a nonprofit organization that said, they got an application from an organization that said, we want to become a registered nonprofit group, and we happen to be a Christian ministry. And the IRS said, no, we're not giving you a 501c3 designation because based on what you tell us you do, you're a political group. You are endorsing candidates. Like you're literally, your whole reason for being is to promote candidates for office. That means you don't get to count as a nonprofit group. So they said no, they rejected the application of that group. And even if you think that's the wrong decision by the IRS, which it's not, that's not evidence of anti-Christian bias. The IRS just said, you're not a church, you're not a Christian ministry, you're a political group that happens to just quote the Bible a lot, so you're not a nonprofit. So that is not something harmless. That is pretty straightforward, and the IRS didn't do anything wrong there. Let's jump to, again, I'm not going over all these, but some of these. Key finding 4, the Biden Department of Education focused its enforcement actions against Christian universities, levying enormous fines that dwarfed the penalties for Larry Nassar's and Jerry Sandusky's assaults. Again, everything you are seeing there is a lie. I'm going to leave this up, but let me explain to you what... I'm going to take this down so I can talk to you. But there are 2 schools involved in this particular aspect that they're talking about here. In 2023, a Christian college called Grand Canyon University, there was evidence that Grand Canyon University told students, your tuition's going to be this much money. We have a calculator on our website so you can figure out how long it'll take you to get your degree, how much it'll cost you, etc. The Department of Education under Joe Biden found that they were lowballing that number. They lied to people and said, it's going to cost you this much. But in reality, you have to take so many more classes to get your degree that the tuition cost is actually this much. And they lied. It wasn't a mistake. They lied about tuition costs over and over and over. And the thing is, let's say you go to that school because you want your degree. By the time you've taken so many classes and you're deep into it, you're not about to say, wait, this is going to cost a lot more money than I anticipated. I need to get out of here. You're not going to do that. You've sunk so many resources into it, and now you're on the hook to pay even more. And so that is just unethical. And to some degree, you're violating what the Department of Education allows you to do. Now, why was the Department of Ed allowed to go after a private Christian school? Because they take federal loans. And the government's job is to make sure those loans are being used properly. So The Biden Department of Education handed that school a fine of nearly $38 million. That's a good thing. And guess what the Trump administration did? They rescinded that penalty because it doesn't give a shit about students and how much they got to pay. They did not care that this Christian school was lying to students, taking their money. They did not care about any of that. They just said it was a Christian school, so any penalty against them is persecution. So we're going to control Z on whatever the Biden administration did. It's infuriating. That was Grand Canyon University. There was one other school, Liberty University, which gets I think nearly $1 billion in student loans a year or something like that. But basically, what did Liberty do? Well, according to a report, they violated something called the Clery Act, Clery. Clery Act basically says if you're getting federal money for student loans, you got to make sure students on your campus are safe. That's it. That's what the Clery Act mandates. But according to the report, Liberty University created a culture where students were afraid to report sexual violence, and Liberty did not let students know when there were threats on campus, as they are obligated to do. One consultant who spoke to the Washington Post at the time said it was the single most blistering Clery report I have ever read, ever. And so Liberty was fined $14 million. And yes, that is so much more than what the Michigan State had to pay for everything involving Larry Nassar. But the argument should be they should fine Michigan State more, not that Liberty should have been fined less. Okay? Punishing schools for not taking threats seriously or for jacking up tuition costs after students are already sucked into your program, that is not anti-Christian bias. Biden wasn't weaponizing the government to go after Christian schools. They just did oversight, and those two Christian schools were cheating students and putting them in harm's way. Biden did not target Christian schools, but that is the argument that is being made by this task force. I want to talk about one more in a little depth here. The Biden Health and Human Services and DOJ scaled back ongoing enforcement efforts to vindicate conscience rights, withdrawing a notice of violation against the University of Vermont Medical Center after it coerced a Christian nurse into participating in an abortion despite her religious objections. Oh my God, what the hell are they talking about? Here's what happened there. It's 2017. The University of Vermont Medical Center, they begin, for the first time, I guess, offering elective abortion procedures, which is great. They should offer healthcare to patients. But they said, hey, if you're a staff member here, a nurse, a doctor, if you don't want to participate in those, okay, tell us what the concern is. Tell us if you are opposed to medically necessary abortions. Tell us if you're opposed to elective abortions or both, and we'll do our best to make sure you don't have to take part in that. But the school did say if there is a patient who absolutely needs to get an abortion because it's for her health, for example, and we can't find a replacement for you, well, our obligation is to the patient. We got to make sure the patient is safe. And it turned out there was one time when a Catholic nurse who opposes abortion was in a situation where she had to help out with an abortion procedure against her will. That's what they're talking about here. So what did the Biden administration do? They helped the school develop a policy that still protected patients, but allowed staffers to refrain from participating in those procedures. That's it. It took a while for them to figure out the way that they could do that so that it would work, but that's what they did. They didn't go to court. They just kind of figured it out behind the scenes, which is great. That sounds like how the process should work. Sometimes you could just take care of things on your own, but that's what the Trump administration is talking about here. Like that they said because that one Catholic nurse had to do this thing she didn't want to do, which is help a patient one time, that is evidence of violating her conscience rights. It's just a ridiculous, ridiculous summary. There's another thing on this list about how the Biden administration, um, they gave money to foster care agencies, which is good. If there are kids without parents who need a home, we want agencies who can do the work of putting them in a safe home so that they can have people looking after them. That's a wonderful thing. And by the way, there are some religious organizations that participate in that and get money to place kids in foster homes. But the Biden administration said, hey, if you're going to take taxpayer dollars to do this work, we want to make sure that these homes that you are placing kids in are not going to make their lives worse because the kids are gay or because they're trans. So you got to make sure you're not discriminating against the kids. That has to be a factor in the parents you place these kids with. And a lot of Christian ministries that got money from the government, they objected because they very much wanted to take in LGBTQ kids and place them in homes where their lives would be in even more danger because those parents are bigots. And that is what this particular thing is talking about, because they're saying that the Biden administration saying, no, let's keep the kids safe is anti-Christian discrimination. There's another one I got to show you here, which is absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe they mentioned this, but they did. The Biden, number 10, the Biden administration sidelined Christians in favor of their preferred constituencies. This one is just plain stupid. I know you remember this particular story. Do you remember that in 2024, Biden issued a proclamation honoring the Transgender Day of Visibility? He did it in 2021 and 22 and 23, and he did it again in 2024. It's a symbolic measure, but basically saying, hey, trans people, we see you. We know it's a rough time out there, but the president knows you're out there, and I wish you all the best, something like that. He said trans people are part of the fabric of our nation. We got to work on eliminating violence and discrimination based on gender identity. Fine, good, a lovely gesture from the Biden administration. But in 2024, I got to tell you, Trans Day of Visibility is always on March 31st. It has been for like 15 years now. March 31st. Well, guess when Easter is? Easter changes dates every year. Like, I don't know when Easter is going to be next year, but in 2024, it turned out Easter was also on March 31st. So when Biden issued his proclamation for trans people, a bunch of very dumb Christians chimed in and said, this is our day. We own today. How dare you issue this proclamation on our Jesus Day? And they whined about it because conservative Christians have a beef with calendars. That's what they're talking about. That, again, I shit you not, this task force said that one of the key findings is the Biden administration sidelined Christians in favor of their preferred constituencies, and they're talking about the Trans Day of Visibility. Utterly idiotic. I think there's something else in here which said right after COVID, when vaccines, right after 2020 rather, when COVID vaccines were finally available, the government said, unless you have a medical reason not to get vaccinated, you got to get vaccinated because vaccines work and we don't want people who are unvaccinated spreading the disease because that's how science works. And a bunch of Christians got mad because they don't know how vaccines work and they think it's the work of the devil, or they think vaccines are made by putting an aborted fetus inside of a blender or something because they're insane. Anyway, the Biden administration said, go get vaccinated so you're safe and the rest of us are safe. They call that anti-Christian discrimination. Like I said, this whole entire task force report is like this. They make shit up. They pretend it's anti-Christian because they don't actually have evidence of anti-Christian bias. And let me show you on page 207. Here's the conclusion. Right up there. The findings are sobering. The task force found that in its zealous pursuit of its preferred policies and constituents, the Biden administration engaged in anti-Christian bias. Beliefs in their homes, in the workplace, and in the public square. Yeah. Christians had to choose between their beliefs and the law. Because I just want you to understand this. Conservative Christians believe that if there is a law that applies to everybody, if you say, I am Christian, you should not have to follow that law. If the law says, don't be racist, and you're a Christian, you should be able to say, but I want to redraw maps so black people can't choose their representatives. Oh, a vaccine protects everybody. I'm a Christian. I want to make sure everyone gets the disease. That's how they think. They think Christians should be allowed to get around the law. If religious neutrality is oppression, if it applies to them, because they deserve special treatment. Just to state the obvious, if anti-Christian bias really does exist, it's wrong. It should not be ignored. And neither should anti-anything bias by the government. I don't want the government playing favorites when it comes to religion or non-religion or anything like that. The problem is this task force, which had one job of finding anti-Christian bias, couldn't think of a single good example. So they made shit up and filled up over 500 pages. There are a bunch of church-state separation groups that spoke out against this report today, but I did want to point you to one from the Interfaith Alliance. And I just want to show you their statement here from Reverend Paul Brandeis Rauschenbusch. Trump's radical DOJ's new report is abominably hypocritical. To find anti-Christian bias, the Trump administration should look in the mirror at its own targeting of Christian communities and leaders who dare to oppose its extreme agenda. From attacking Pope Leo to Bishop Budd. Bishop Budd, by the way, during the Trump inauguration in 2025, she's the one who delivered a church service and asked Trump to follow Jesus and have mercy on the marginalized. And after she said that, there were Republicans who said that lady needs to be deported, even though she was born in New Jersey. They said she was an idiot, and they said she was bad at her job. That's Bishop Buddy. This president has repeatedly... And one more down here. Given President Trump's own very public disrespect for Easter and shocking portrayal of himself as a Christ-like figure in social media posts, the idea that his administration is somehow prioritizing the traditions and value of the Christian faith is absurd. Reports and stunts like this are meant to distract from the admin's persecution of millions of Americans, including the many Black Christians across the South whose civil rights and political freedoms are directly targeted by yesterday's Supreme Court ruling. Absolutely true. I love that. That's a powerful statement, and I appreciate that. So this task force was always a sham. This report proves it. Anti-Christian bias by the government could be a thing, but it's not. These people had one job: find that anti-Christian bias and look at the examples. They got nothing. All right, I'm done with this story. What questions we got here before I move on? 565 pages, mostly genealogies. Yeah, 300 through 500 are just the begats. It was kind of annoying. They think anti-Christian bias is when we point out how ridiculous Hegseth comes off. Seriously, they think if you criticize Pete Hegseth and his Christianizing of our military, that you apparently hate Christians and not have a policy issue with Pete Hegseth. If we're a Christian nation due to a simple majority at the time of founding, and if that's supposed to inform how we all live today, then by that same logic, shouldn't we have a ruling class of farmers? Well put. Yes, we should all be farmers. We should all be white. We should all be male, because the females didn't count at the time. You know how it is. Yeah, they really want to go back in time in order to serve their needs, but like only for certain reasons. Christians' worst enemy are other Christians. They are limiting their own rights. I've said this before, but like, why do I think the people leaving organized religion will keep... Why do I think that's going to happen more in the future? Because a lot of young people are going to see what Christians are doing today, partnering with Trump, backing Trump, especially white evangelicals, conservative Christians, and they are going to want nothing to do with a religion that cruel. Didn't ICE shoot a preacher with a rubber bullet? Yep. And I believe that happened in Illinois. There are pictures of him, video of that happening. Yes. When Democrats take charge again, knock on wood, should they do their own religious bias investigation? I don't know that you need a task force, but I do think it is worth exploring. The administration, any administration, gets reports all the time of religious bias. And there are systems in place to investigate that stuff. Like the Department of Justice is supposed to take civil rights complaints seriously, right? If you have a functioning Department of Justice and a good civil rights division. The Trump administration has basically dismantled all that stuff. So this task force is replacing people who actually worked on this stuff for a living. What should Democrats do if they take charge? Just have a functioning government. And if there is a Christian who says, I've been the victim of religious discrimination, I want that claim to be taken seriously and investigated. And if they are correct that they are being discriminated against because of their faith, then the government can do whatever appropriate thing it needs to do. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just telling you what this task force found is not anti-Christian bias. All right, let me jump to a different, happier, interesting story. And close some of these tabs. Okay, let's talk. we gotta talk about this guy right here. This is Micah Beckwith. He is the lieutenant governor of Indiana. He is someone whose name probably would not be on your radar because why the hell would anyone care about the lieutenant governor of Indiana or the lieutenant governor of most states, if we're being honest? But he decided to inject himself into the news recently because he decided to pick a fight with a high school band because he's got nothing better to do with his life. So, Micah Beckwith, let me tell you what happened here. There is a high school just north of Indianapolis. It's Westfield High School. And if you know anything about Indiana, they are like the mecca for high school bands. There are a lot of national marching competitions, or at least one big one that I know of, but they do a lot of the big high school band competitions, drumline competitions, things like that. There have been documentaries made about those competitions. If you're into marching, that is where you want to be. So in Indianapolis, just outside, there's a school called Westfield High School. They're a huge, huge high school. They have a huge arts program and they have a huge marching band that is competitive. And because their marching band is so big, they have like offshoots where if you're into a certain type of music, you could do this thing. So they just started an indoor percussion team. Think of it like marching band, but it's just the drummers, right? So they've been working on a show for several weeks, maybe months, and they wrapped up their season with a few last performances. And let me show you the flyer for this show. This is their marching band. Look at how badass this looks. This show is called The Red Line, and they're going to finals at Indiana State University on March 28th. And they're going to have a send-off at the high school in the afternoon because this is one of those high schools where even the students at the school, they are cheering on their drummers before they head off to the national competition. So What is the Red Line show all about? Well, according to Facebook, this is what they posted. Um, let me see if I could get this up. There we go. The Red Line follows a journey of knowing where boundaries exist, yet feeling an urge to cross them. From the restraint of Bolero to the fire of Carmen Fantasy, and I'm not pronouncing that. Restraint gives way to passion as precision collides with obsession, leaving us changed forever. Look, I have no idea what the hell any of that means, but I will tell you the Red Line included music from, as you saw, the opera Carmen, Ravel's Bolero. So, and these are not new. Like marching bands have been performing this music for many, many years. But cool. So they're playing opera music. They're playing this classical music. That's awesome. Good for them. And I just want to remind you, we're talking about only the drummers. They're not performing these operas. It's just the drummers playing excerpts from those shows, right? They're not acting out the scenes. They drum, they have the costumes on. It looks kind of awesome, right? And they're really good at it. That's the thing. That's why they made it to the national competition. Why would anyone be mad about this, right? Well, guess what? The high school posted like a reel with a bunch of pictures of the band. This is one of them. And you just see these kids dressed up, ready to perform. They got the red and black costume. They got the eye makeup ready to go. This is one picture in a series of pictures they had of these kids getting ready, getting excited to perform at the event. Look what Micah Beckwith decided to say by like chiming in on this high school band's performance. By the way, a month after they posted this, here's Micah Beckwith. This is Westfield High School. I'm starting to get the sense that schools like Westfield love giving the middle finger to Christian conservative families of our community. Hey, parents, use the vouchers and get your kids out of our Indiana public schools like Westfield. Their futures and their lives depend on it. Oh my God. So let's just cover this for a second. The lieutenant governor of Indiana is saying, hey guys, there's a public school in my state. And instead of boosting them up and saying, hey, look at how awesome these students are in my state. They're amazing. They're talented. And hey, everybody, why don't we wish them luck on their big competition coming up? Because that's the sort of thing a normal politician would do. This guy is like, hey, look at their eye makeup and red and black costumes. You know what I can tell about this school? They hate Jesus, which I'm willing to bet that if you go anywhere outside of Indianapolis and you're in the state of Indiana, odds are there's a lot of Christians in this band. But that's the first thing. So he's just implying that this school hates Jesus for no reason whatsoever. He just saw the costume. And the other thing he says is use vouchers and get your kids out of Indiana public schools like this one. Basically telling parents to steal money from the public schools, because that's what vouchers are, and send their kids to private religious schools. And vouchers are a problem across the country. But just imagine the audacity of a lieutenant governor saying, hey, the public schools in my state, they suck. Hey, parents, get your kids out of our schools. Like it's the elected officials' jobs to make sure public institutions are working and functioning. Like if you think the public schools in your state are bad, your job is to make them better. And this guy's like, hey, I'm the lieutenant governor of Indiana. You know what I think about public schools? They suck. Get your kids out of them. Who wants to go to a public school in Indiana? Ugh. Who wants to live in Indiana? Nobody. That's Micah Beckwith for you. So this asshole just goes after these kids and their school and their arts program for no reason. Again, this is several weeks after the fact. Utterly shameless, just a pathetic human being. And in case you're not familiar with Micah Beckwith, this is a guy who has said the LGBTQ movement is operating out of a demonic playbook. He said the 3/5 compromise, where slaves counted as 3/5 of a person, he said that was a, quote, good thing. He said that when he got elected, it was a choice between godly boldness and the Jezebel spirit. He said people who support church-state separation are, quote, the LGBTQ community trying to support Hamas. And he also says Zoran Mamdani is trying to force his values on New York City because he is openly Muslim. So anyway, that's Micah Beckwith for you. So, and the other thing I got to mention is that as all this is happening, Micah Beckwith's own church is currently mired in a scandal involving child sexual abuse. But sure, yeah, get mad about red costumes and eye makeup. So last week, or very recently, Beckwith was invited as a guest on a conservative talk radio show, and he appeared on that show. And I want to show you what he said to the host, because the host asked him like about that post he made and like why he was picking a fight with these high schoolers. And look at what this guy said. Yeah, here we go. Look at what this guy said. I know it's a block of text, but bear with me here. I was made aware of this from Christian students who attend Westfield. Sure you did. And they said they felt uncomfortable, but didn't want to speak out because they were afraid to speak out. Let's stop there. Again, I promise you there are plenty of Christians at Westfield High School. It's a high school in Indiana. There are Christians. Also, if you don't like the show or you're uncomfortable with it, you don't tell the lieutenant governor. Go to your band director. Go to whoever's running the show here. Talk to your school's administration. Why would you go to Micah Beckwith? That makes no sense. Anyway, they were not seen. They were not being heard. So I didn't go looking for this. It was brought to my attention. Who cares? You're the lieutenant governor. You can pick and choose your battles. You don't have to respond to every idiot who messages you. When I looked at it, I said, yeah, this is demonic. And then we looked into it even more. And their theme for the drumline, let me explain this. Oh yeah, this should be good. Let a conservative Christian Republican explain opera to you. Let's see how this goes. It's the red line. And the red line follows the journey of knowing where boundaries exist, yet feeling an urge to cross them from the restraint. Yeah. Now, if you don't know who Carmen is, it's a fantasy novel. It's a character, and this is a woman. She's a seductive witch. This is what self-identified. That's not a sentence. Her job in this opera that they are actually playing music from is to seduce a husband and a father out of his marriage into an affair. So the music they're playing is from that opera, a seductive witch. Her whole goal is to try to get a man to cheat on his wife to destroy their family. I'm just imagining a very angry Randy Marsh here. And Westfield tax dollars are promoting this, and we pay a lot of freaking money in property taxes in Westfield. Everything about that is stupid. First of all, they're not performing the show. They're performing some music on the drums. No one who doesn't already know the show isn't going to know any of this. Second thing, that's not what happens in the show. There is no husband in the show. There is no married man who Carmen is trying to seduce. The man in question is single in the show. So no, she's not trying to rip apart his family. That's not how anything works. Like Beckwith didn't even read the Wikipedia synopsis of the plot. And again, what did he look at? A couple of pictures of the band or the actual performance? Because guess what? I watched video of the actual performance. It's up on YouTube. You know what you won't find? Anything controversial. It's a pretty standard, very well done band performance. Beckwith is insane. By the way, by that logic, no one should ever read the Bible in school ever, because it's full of rape and genocide and slavery, incest. I'm sure Beckwith doesn't have a problem with that, though. So to pretend that this drum performance is advocating for family destruction by way of seduction, That is so dumb that like David Barton would be like, hey, calm down. I think you're taking this too far. And Beckwith doesn't give a damn about anyone having an affair because he is a MAGA cultist who supports Donald Trump. What else did he say in this same right-wing talk show interview? Let's see. Because he didn't stop there. He said more. There's always more. The host asked him, what would you say to the students of this band? And Micah Beckwith tried to explain, like, you guys, I'm not going after the students here. Here's what he said. I would say that they don't know what they're doing. And that's what the demonic always does. They have no idea. Kids are dumb, y'all. I was a band teacher for 15 years. That's a lie. No, he wasn't. Maybe in church he worked with like the choir or something or some music. That's not a high school band director. So stop that. Stolen valor is what that is. They don't know what they're giving themselves over to. It's not the kids I'm going after. It's the administration. It's the adults. It's the people who should be watching out for them because kids are too dumb to know better. Sorry, I paraphrased the last bit there. And then he says near the end here, the devil gets a foothold and their lives are destroyed by learning to play classical music for a drum performance. Conservative Christians are not smart people. Maybe he's mad because in 2024, when he was running for office, he actually was supposed to appear at Westfield High School to speak with like the agriculture students, and the school allegedly disinvited him because there was a lot of opposition to him. And then after he got elected, maybe, or like a month before the election, people also protested his appearance because they knew that, this guy, Beckwith, got elected, but he hadn't sworn into office yet. And in that interim, he did appear at Westfield High School, and there was a lot of protests because people were pissed off that this Christian nationalist bigot was about to be in public office. So maybe that's why he's mad. Now, I will say one of the coolest things about this whole story is watching how many people have come out in defense of the band. Here's the mayor of Westfield. He doesn't call out Beckwith, but look at what he says in that second paragraph. Our students continue to represent Westfield at a high level, both on and off the field. The achievements highlighted by the district reflect not just talent, but a strong commitment to discipline, teamwork, and doing things the right way. Yeah, that's what a normal politician would say about any high school doing anything awesome like this. It's not hard to do. I love this next sentence too in the third paragraph. When you hear from Westfield, Indiana, announced on a national stage, it is a point of pride for our entire community. Yeah, why wouldn't it be? You're the mayor of Westfield. Why wouldn't the lieutenant governor of Indiana feel the same way? I appreciate that the Indiana Percussion Association issued their own statement with this image. Proud to support Westfield Band. But even they said the same thing. These performers dedicate countless hours to developing discipline, teamwork, creativity, and resilience, ... Public criticism, especially when it targets students and their efforts, undermines the positive impact that arts education has on growth, expression, and belonging. And that's a great line. I wish they said Micah Beckwith is an asshole. They should have. They should have. There's one more I wanted to show you. And it's from a guy right here. His name is Andrew Muth. And as far as I can tell, Andrew Muth is the director of bands at Westfield. So he's the guy who oversees all of this. And I just want you to see what he said, because he chimed in on this after Micah Beckwith's post had gone viral for all the wrong reasons. What has he learned about this? I've learned that kids are incredibly brave. When things were not easy, our students chose courage. They carried themselves with grace and class, even as their images and performances were shared thousands of times online. They did it for one simple reason. They love band and they believe in what they are a part of. I want to share one more bit down here. I grew up in a Christian household where I was taught a simple but powerful idea from Ezekiel 22:30, to stand in the gap. To me, that means showing up for others when it matters most. It means doing what's right, even when it's difficult. It means choosing to care, to lead with integrity, and to protect the people around you. We all have moments when we are called to step forward, to support someone, to speak up, or to be the steady presence others need. That was this moment. I am proud to lead this program. I am proud of our kids. I'm forever proud to be a rock, stand in the gap when it matters, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. Listen, I was in my high school band freshman year and then I quit. I didn't love it. But I'm just saying, if a guy like that is your director, how could you not want to be a part of this program? And I know some of you know this. I am a coach of a public high school team myself. It's what I do in the winter. And like, you better believe I will fall on my sword for my students too. So I get where this guy is coming from. And to have the lieutenant governor of your state trashing your school and your kids after all the work they did, I can't even imagine what that guy is going through right now. But I love that he's the guy in charge of all this. And I'm sorry that all these people have to deal with a governor and a lieutenant governor who don't give a shit about them, because unfortunately, the majority of people in Indiana are Republicans who enjoy voting for this shit. And a lot of them are conservative Christians, and they don't give a shit about the arts. They don't care about public schools, and they don't mind if people are assholes to kids as long as you're doing it in the name of Jesus. I hope people push back against this. I mean, sometimes you wonder, like, what will it take for people to realize Republicans are horrible, horrible human beings? And sometimes it's something like this. It's something that's not necessarily political, but it just strikes to the heart of something you deal with and you love on a daily basis. That's why when gas prices rise, it's like, really? That's what it took for you to not like Republicans? All right. I mean, they just took voting rights power away from black people, but if gas prices do it, so be it. Maybe if you see the lieutenant governor attacking your band and your high school and your community, that's something that crosses party lines. Everyone should be pissed off about that. Maybe that's what it takes. And if you want to act out again, if you want to push back against this, one, everyone in that community needs to make sure no Republicans get elected to any local office. They do have the power to stop that. I don't care if Micah Beckwith is not on the ballot. Make sure no Republicans win city council races, school board races, anything like that, because they're all part of the same playbook. They're all part of the same party. Don't vote for any of them. And make sure people around you know not to vote for any of them because they like Beckwith if you're a Republican. The other thing you can do, and I want to make sure I get this out there, if you want to support this particular band, I'm going to send a link to Den so he could put it out there for everyone. There is a website you can go to support this particular band. And you can go to westfield.band/support and go to that link and you can donate to this particular band program, this music program itself. Because if any of you were ever in a high school music program that meant a lot to you, you know how important this stuff is. And my God, if you were lucky enough to be in a music program that was really good, then I know your life was influenced for the better because of it. So, like, if you want to donate to this band, go do it. Westfield.band/support. But honestly, go donate to your local public high school arts program as well. Yeah, I will stop there for now. I'm gonna pull up this screen, but what questions we have here while this is coming up? I like how he uses the middle finger emoji, like it's offensive to say middle finger, and safer for him as a Christian to show it instead. Yeah, he'll call kids demonic, but when it comes to middle finger, he's like, I'll just show a picture. I don't want to actually say anything. Yeah, right there with you. There were a bunch of comments under the video of their performance that Hemant linked to in the article. They said they were there because of Hemant. It was cool. That's awesome. I'm glad people are seeing their performance. Honestly, if you've never done this, seriously, go look up high school bands at, like, I forgot what the Indianapolis Nationals band program is called. Someone put that in the comments. But like, go look at halftime shows that are on YouTube from like the top high school bands in the country or college bands in the country. If you've never seen it, they're so good. They're so good. Bands of America. Thank you. Go look up Bands of America. Go look up some of these halftime shows. They're amazing. They're just fun to watch. What does church state separation have to do with Hamas? Nothing. But if you're a Republican, it's all in the same bucket. They put everyone who's slightly to the left of them, they lump them all together with whatever terrorists you want to think of. I mean, they're comparing Zoran Mamdani to the guys who attacked us on 9/11. So the nuance does not matter to these conservative Christians. Hello, I am here on behalf of 34 other Christians. I know what the joke is, and I feel like trying to explain it is going to take another hour, so I'm going to skip past this, but I appreciate it. So the thing destroying the youths is European classical music. Yup. They hate modern music, and apparently they hate classical music now too, these conservatives. So yeah, don't play opera. That'll ruin the kids' lives. Which makes you wonder, what is it that they want kids to play in marching band? What's okay? The theme from VeggieTales, but even that's going to be too woke for them. I live in California. Are there any groups or communities that get together for atheists? There are. It depends on where you live. Atheists United is one group you could look up. They're in Los Angeles. I know there's a California Free Thought Day that happens every year in Sacramento, where the capital is. California Free Thought Day. But there are local groups. But go do a simple Google search. You will find them, especially in the big cities. What instrument did Hemant play? I played trumpet. Yeah, I did. I did it in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and I loved it. And I went to marching band camp the summer before high school started, and that was a good band. They were amazing. I was so excited to be part of these halftime shows. And then my family moved to a different high school. And I will say, while I met some awesome people in 9th grade, it just wasn't the same. It wasn't as fun anymore. So I decided to leave marching band after 9th grade, which was fine. I ended up doing theater in high school instead. Loved it. Theater, public speaking, speech, did all that stuff instead. All right, jump into another story. I swear these stories are going in order of length, so they're going to get shorter as we go through. Okay, let's talk. I think one of the biggest stories that happened today is not one you heard in the news. It's nothing to do with Donald Trump directly. It is this story right here that appeared in the Associated Press. The pastor of the nation's largest Methodist church is running for the U.S. Senate in Kansas. And here's the thing. As of now, you probably don't know who this guy is. You're probably not paying attention to the Senate race in Kansas. And I say that because I did not know who that guy was, and I was not paying attention to the Senate race in Kansas. But I want to tell you about this guy because to me, this could potentially be a really, really big story. And I want you to know who this guy is. Okay, so 2 months ago, this guy named Adam Hamilton, he announced that he was thinking about running for Senate in Kansas. He wanted some time. He said, I'm thinking about it, but I need time to travel across the state, talk to voters, maybe talk to potential donors. And I got to figure out if there's even any shot of me winning this thing before I devote the rest of my life, for the next several months, at least, to this campaign, which is a very normal, sensible thing to do. And the reason he thought maybe I have a shot here is because he's already the leader of a United Methodist Church called Church of the Resurrection. He founded it over 3 decades ago. It is now the largest Methodist church in America. It is one of the largest in the world. It has over 24,000 active members every week. So it is huge. And this guy founded it. He is the leader of this entire place. So he's like, I know how to be a leader. I've dealt with stuff for many decades. Okay. Now, what makes this guy unique is that he is not a white evangelical fundamentalist preacher. And by the way, when I saw that Associated Press headline, I saw people commenting online saying, oh, great, the last thing we need is another Christian preacher in Congress. Hold up, you're getting the story wrong. This guy has said that he admits there are hundreds of mistakes in the Bible, even though he believes in the overall story. He said it's wrong for churches to prohibit women from being ordained as preachers. He supports social justice. And if you know anything about the Methodist Church, it's that over the past couple of years, they've gone through a huge schism because the United Methodist Church wanted to have openly gay clergy members, and they wanted clergy members to be able to perform same-sex marriage ceremonies. But the Global Methodist Church did not want that. And so they had a vote, there was a schism, and Adam Hamilton is on the side of the Methodist Church that wants inclusion for LGBTQ people. I am not saying he is as progressive as I am, or I would imagine most of you are. He is hardly a progressive firebrand. He is one of these guys who I typically roll my eyes at because he says he could bridge the divide between liberals and conservatives, Republicans and Democrats. And my first thought is like, what do you want? Race? If there's a group fighting for racism and against racism, what's the middle ground there? So I roll my eyes anytime someone says they're like a moderate or a centrist. But this guy has genuinely dealt with a lot of issues involving some progressive views pushing up against some conservative Christian views, and he's navigated that. Very interesting. Okay, so his whole shtick is, I've spent my life bringing people together from different sides of the aisle on a lot of issues. Why don't I do that in politics? And he also said that a lot of people have been telling him for years, you should run for office. And he always said no. But in recent months, that call for him to run has really hit a fever pitch, to the point that even his wife said he should do it. And for him, that was the thing that's made him go, all right, maybe I should consider this. And let me show you a video that he played for his church, or at least he posted it on the church's website, because he wanted to tell them, hey, I'm paraphrasing here. He wanted to say, I've been your pastor and the founder of this church for like over 3 decades. I got to tell you, I am thinking about stepping away from the church. Why am I doing that? Because I'm thinking of running for Senate. And if I decide to do that, I won't be here very much. Like, my preaching schedule will have to go down considerably. But I want you to hear it from me instead of from a newspaper somewhere. So let me tell you what I'm thinking about doing, how it will affect you. You know, to me, that seems like a pretty good thing, because generally, if a pastor who's been in that sort of position for decades suddenly leaves a church, it's because of a scandal. And I think he wanted everyone to know there's no scandal here, but I might be walking away, and I want you to know why. Let me play you an excerpt from this video he played for his church.
Hi, Resurrection family. Today in my e-note, I shared that Levon and I are seriously considering my running this year as an independent candidate for the United States Senate from the state of Kansas. Here's where I'm at. I'm strongly considering this, but I've not made a decision. I'm not a candidate for Senate yet. I'm just thinking about it, continuing to pray about it. But I wanted to make sure that you heard about this from me, that I'm seriously considering this, rather than reading about it in the newspaper or hearing it from someone else. I've devoted 36 years of my life to you, this church family that I love so much, and I'm inviting you to join me in the discernment process, to be praying for me and to pray about it. Just please lift me up, if you would, in prayer, and to be thinking about this. Now, as you're a part of that discernment, I'm not asking you to vote for me. I'm not asking you to support me. I'm just asking, would you please pray for me for God's wisdom?
there's a couple things he said in that video that are very interesting. One, he's thinking about running as an independent. And I get why he would be doing that, because Kansas is a very weird state politically. And for those of you who don't know the landscape of Kansas right now, let me give you a little background. Who is the senator right now that he would be running against? It's a guy named Roger Marshall, who you probably don't see a lot on TV, but he is pretty much a Trump-loving MAGA cultist who is also deeply unpopular. People really don't like this guy. He's like Ted Cruz, but like less famous. So that's Roger Marshall for you. Conspiracy theorist, MAGA cultist, etc. This seat, this Senate seat in Kansas, is also considered, by the Cook Political Report at least, to be a very solid Republican seat. And what that means is the Republican is probably going to win this race no matter what happens. And usually the national media only pays attention to seats that are toss-ups or that like lean Republican, lean Democrat. This one doesn't lean. This is solidly Republican. So Roger Marshall may be unpopular, but he's a Republican from Kansas. He's probably going to win this race. Okay. Now, here's where it gets weird because, I should also tell you, in 2022, the last time there was a Senate race in Kansas, the other Republican won by over 20 points. It was like 60-40. And in 2020, when Roger Marshall first ran for office, he won by 11 points, which is still impressive given that 2020 was a year all the anti-Trump people came out to vote, and he still won by a comfortable margin. So again, you would imagine if you're a Democrat running against Roger Marshall, you're probably going to lose. However, who is the governor of Kansas? It's a Democrat, Laura Kelly. And she didn't just get elected because people hated the guy before her who was a Republican. She got reelected. So there is evidence of people in Kansas voting for a Democrat. Also, after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, Kansas was one of the first states to consider a constitutional amendment basically banning access to the procedure in all circumstances. And people in Kansas voted against that amendment. So again, when Democrats put up a fight, they could win. So that's also worth considering. So if Hamilton wants to get elected, I get why he might say, I'm not going to run as a Democrat because I think people are going to hold that against me. They don't have necessarily a great brand, at least when it comes to Senate races. I might run as an independent. And the other thing to keep in mind there is Nebraska is near Kansas. And in Nebraska, what are they doing to try to win a Senate seat there against an incumbent Republican? Well, they are running an independent candidate named Dan Osborne. Like the Democratic Party in Nebraska said, you know what? We're not even going to field a candidate. We're going to put all our resources behind that guy running as an independent because that might be the best chance we have to win and unseat a Republican in a deeply red state. And so maybe Adam Hamilton is thinking, well, in deeply red Kansas, maybe that's my best path forward. But that only works if Democrats agree to support you as an independent instead of fielding their own candidate. Okay, so that's why this guy's thinking, maybe I could do this. I want to show you this one other thing. Look at the church's website. This is what they had up on their site. Resurrection, a United Methodist Church, special announcement from Adam Hamilton. And they basically included an email where he explained, I'm thinking about running for Senate. They included a link to that video I just showed you. They also have a Q&A, which is really interesting. And I want you to look at some of it. Look at number 2. Will the church endorse candidates? No. Resurrection does not endorse political candidates or parties. And they also say somewhere in here, like if Adam Hamilton runs for office, they are not going to endorse him. They are not going to host or engage in campaign activity. They are not going to be a weapon of his campaign. You know what I mean? Will church resources be used for the campaign? No. We have firewalls established and monitored by our people to ensure separation between the church and campaign. They say staff won't work on his campaign during work hours. We're not going to share our membership rolls with his campaign. There will be no campaign events at our church, etc. I mean, I get why they have this FAQ up there, right? So very interesting. So I will also say that's a lot of stuff to write on the church website for a guy who's only thinking about running. It sounds like he's definitely running, right? But they're also, you get why they put that page up on the website. It's because if Adam Hamilton ran for office, it would be a massive change to a church that has seen a lot of stability in terms of its leaders. And he wants to give them a heads up that this is where his mind is at, and so he might leave. Well, guess what happened after that? Once it became clear that Hamilton was seriously thinking about running and that he would announce his decision after Easter, Republicans started freaking out. Because even though Kansas should be a safe Republican seat, this guy is not the sort of person they want to go against. They want to go up against a Democrat that they can pretend is like the AOC of Kansas, because that's what they'll do no matter who it is. But it's hard to do that with a guy like this, who also has a lot of popularity and a lot of reach, right? So what did the Republican Party of Kansas do? Well, they just issued, if I could show you this, they just issued a complaint with the Federal Election Commission, which basically oversees finances for campaigns. The Republican Party issued a complaint against him before he's even running for office. And I'm not reading all of this, but look at this. Facts. In February, Adam Hamilton publicly announced he was exploring a candidacy for Senate. And instead of doing a press conference, Hamilton instead announced his exploratory committee via a website and YouTube channel maintained by Church of the Resurrection, a United Methodist church. And they kind of went over the FAQ that I just told you about. And so basically, the Republicans in Kansas are saying he's doing all this stuff. He's not running for office yet, but he's winking about it. And he's announcing all this on the church's website. And this basically amounts to a lack of separation between church and state. This man is violating the Johnson Amendment by using his church to endorse his candidacy, even though he's not a candidate yet. And we don't like that because we're Republicans and we care about church-state separation and the Johnson Amendment. The hypocrisy there is so obvious. The funniest thing, they put out a press release announcing the thing I just showed you. You got to see this because this is so funny to me. The Kansas Republican Party today filed a formal complaint. Yeah. Look at the third paragraph. The Kansas Republican Party believes strongly in the rule of law. Oh my God. Bullshit. You're Republicans. If Donald Trump breaks the law, and he kind of does all the time, you guys don't say a damn thing. Republicans love crimes as long as it's someone in their party committing it. You do not care about the rule of law. This complaint raises serious questions about the separation between the Church of the Resurrection's religious mission and partisan political activity. It raises serious questions about the separation of church and state, which again, Kansas Republicans definitely do not care about. Look at the last lines here. No one is above the law, except anyone who with an R after their name. And the FEC must investigate and enforce the rules that protect the integrity of our elections, which Republicans believe are all fraudulent anyway, so who the hell cares? I cannot believe they wrote that, and I imagine they did it with a straight face. It is kind of hilarious in a way. But, I mean, okay, here's the question. Do they have a point? Is the church breaking any rules by talking about Hamilton's potential candidacy? And I would argue, as someone who has covered church-state separation and the Johnson Amendment forever, I don't know that this is a violation. I don't think it is. like I just said, I think Hamilton just wants the church to know why he might be stepping away. And instead of being coy about it, like, I think I may be taking on another job, but I won't tell you about it, but I might be leaving. Instead of doing that, he's just coming out in front of the story and saying, look, I might run for office, so I might leave. No one at the church is here to promote my campaign. I'm not asking for your votes, he said. I just want you to know this is where I'm going, maybe. And by the way, he was scheduled to retire in 2030. If he runs for office, that clock would just kind of get pushed up. So the people, the elders of his church would have a little more time to know, hey, you might need to start looking for a replacement for me. That to me is, that strikes me as responsible. That does not strike me as a violation of church-state separation. Now, if he announced his campaign during a church service, if he told people, God loves you, and because of that, God wants you to vote for me, that would be a problem. I would personally be upset, but it wouldn't violate the law if he said you should vote for me because I'm Christian. But he hasn't done that either. So I don't think anyone's going after this guy for violating the Johnson Amendment, church-state separation, FEC rules. You know why I think the Republicans did this? I think they figured Adam Hamilton's going to run for office, but a lot of people don't know who this guy is. So you know what we should do? We should file an ethics complaint against Adam Hamilton so that when you Google his name, the first thing that pops up will be Adam Hamilton ethics complaint. And since most people don't know how to read, they'll just assume he's a horrible guy. I honestly think that's what the Republican Party was trying to do. Ethics complaint, Adam Hamilton, let's get those phrases together. That's my theory. Am I being a conspiracy theorist? I don't think so. But in any case, I will tell you, there's a separate page for his exploratory committee, and Adam Hamilton put up a totally different video on that one where he explained why he's considering running for office and why you might want to vote for him. He also, I enjoyed this, when one reporter asked the Republican Party, when one news reporter asked Adam Hamilton if he had a response to what the Republicans were saying, this is last week. Look at what his spokesperson said. He has a spokesperson. Roger Marshall would rather launch false attacks on people of faith and the largest church in Kansas than defend his record as a failed politician because he knows Kansans are tired of politicians like him who aren't listening and keep making things worse in Washington. Roger Marshall knows that if Adam Hamilton runs against him, Adam will win. And I will just say that doesn't sound like a spokesperson whose dude is not running. That's a spokesperson who's very much ready to pick fights, which I appreciate. So I wanted to show you one other thing too. This is fascinating to me. There was a poll done a couple of months ago. Just a typical poll because it is a Senate race. It's a big deal. And at the time, Adam Hamilton's name was in the mix, but I don't even think he had declared his exploratory committee yet, but his name was considered as a possible Senate candidate. And I want you to look at these two questions. This is just purely hypothetical. If the general, before I show you this, I should tell you the same poll found that 85% of the people in Kansas had no name recognition for Adam Hamilton. They have no clue who this guy is. Keep that in mind when you see this poll result. If the general election for U.S. Senate were held today and the candidates were Republican Roger Marshall or independent Adam Hamilton, who nobody knows, who would you vote for? And look at these numbers right there. 51% said they would vote for the independent guy they've never heard of. Interesting. But then look at the very next question they asked people, and I'll disappear here. If the general election for U.S. Senate were held today and the candidates were Republican Roger Marshall or Democrat Adam Hamilton, who would you vote for? And look at these numbers right over here. The Democrat guy they've never heard of would lose 46 to 54. So what do you take away from this polling? It's that a random dude who runs as an independent might have a better chance than a random dude who runs as a Democrat in an election year where people are going to be pissed off at Republicans. So this is why Adam Hamilton was like, if I run, maybe I should do it as an independent, because Democrats don't have great name recognition. Well, as I showed you in that Associated Press story, look at this. He had today morning, Adam Hamilton decided, he announced formally he is going to run for Senate. And importantly, he said he's going to run as a Democrat. Now, why is he running as a Democrat? He said, I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but strategically, if he runs as an independent, but Democrats field a candidate, you're going to split the votes from people who don't like Republicans, and then Roger Marshall's definitely going to win. So he decided his best path forward is to run as a Democrat, try to win the primary, and then get the resources that he could really only get running as a major party candidate. So I get that too. He will have to overcome that stigma against Democrats in a red state. But again, to me, he strikes me as very much a Christian in the mold of James Tallarico in Texas, who is also giving Republicans a run for their money. Kansas Democrats had virtually no chance of winning this race and no candidates who are going to put up much of a fight. Even well-known people in Kansas, Democrats were going to lose that race. No one was thinking about it. But as of today, you have a very popular Christian pastor, not just popular, but the guy who heads up the largest Methodist church in the country saying, I'm going to run as a Democrat because I don't like what these Republicans are doing. Is he going to be the most progressive Democrat in the Senate if he won? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you what, when you think about what you're expecting to get out of Kansas, you will take any Democrat you can get. I absolutely hated Joe Manchin with a passion when he was in the Senate because he got in the way of so many progressive bills that I wanted to see pass. But you're not going to find another Democrat who could win a statewide race in West Virginia. So you took Manchin because that's the best you were going to get. And you put up with the bullshit because he will vote for the good judges, generally speaking. So Joe Manchin is so much better than you would have expected. Kyrsten Sinema was not. So when she left, celebration. Ruben Gallego is so much better than she is. John Fetterman sucks right now. I hope another Democrat replaces him next time in 2 years when he's up for re-election, because you can do better than him. But that's where my mind is at. If you're thinking about a Senate seat, this guy is not a progressive Christian, at least by my definition. He's a pretty centrist, moderate guy. But if that's what it takes to win a race in Kansas, I will take it 100% of the time. Happy to throw my weight behind this guy if he believes, if Democrats believe he's their best chance of winning. So want to get him on your radar. Adam Hamilton running as a Democrat. Primary is going to be soon. But honestly, it looks like that path is paved for him if he wants it. And the question is, what's that campaign going to look like? I'm really excited to see what comes of that. Okay, I will stop there. What questions we got here? Is this, in this political climate, a Christian pastor independent is an absolute threat to any Republican now. And a Christian pastor who's a Democrat could very much now be a threat to any Republican, because you could peel off some of those Christians who are very alienated by what Republicans are doing in their name. I mean, hashtag not all Christians love what ICE is doing to terrorize brown people. They don't like what Trump is doing to just start wars. They don't like the Trump imitating Jesus shit. So there is room to peel off some of those people. And if you can get people excited because you have a chance, there'll be a lot of money poured into this race for this guy. Indeed, Prey on It seems sus to most modern folks because it's as though they will be able to say definitively whether or not the decision to run is divine. Yeah, listen, when he said pray on me to make the right decision, yes, you can roll your eyes. I was rolling my eyes. Whatever. Again, if you told me there is anybody who can beat Roger Marshall in Kansas, the answer should be, yeah, fine, we'll take it. Who cares? Get the Republicans out. And whatever problems Hamilton poses in the future, we'll deal with it then, because for now, the status quo is another Republican vote. Anything to change that. I'm not against more sane or sane-ish Christians running for office, but it makes me a little nervous as a queer person. I don't fully trust them to not stab us in the back later. You know what? That is a fair concern. I will say, Tallarico in Texas, who wears his religion on his sleeve, has been in office for a while. And so you can look at his record. He's been really good on LGBTQ issues. This is what makes Hamilton interesting, because he doesn't have that track record, and he's going to have to answer a lot of those questions. But and I don't want to take anything away from your very serious and real concern. I just go back to right now, the alternative is an anti-LGBTQ guy who is a Republican. That guy is going to win the race. And if you found somebody who was marginally better than that, isn't that something you want more than the alternative? Like, I know it's cliche, but don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. This guy is good. I don't even know how good. I will say Raphael Warnock out of Georgia, who is a pastor, who is deeply Christian, has been amazing. I hope Adam Hamilton is a preacher in that vein. We would be very lucky if that were the case. Such projections, mega churches do all of that. Yeah, the promoting candidates from the pulpit, yes, and thank you for being a member. Or it could backfire like it did with James Tallarico. We got him a huge amount of coverage. I assume you're talking about the Republicans going after him in the case of Tallarico when he did an interview with Stephen Colbert. Like, there was a complaint that Colbert could not air that interview segment because it would violate FCC rules or something. And so Colbert talked about it on his show, put the segment up on YouTube right before that primary happened. And from that point on, Tallarico was skyrocketing into victory. So I hope this backfires. I hope that the story becomes Republicans are scared of this guy, which gives him momentum early on in this race. What are your thoughts on Richard Carrier? That's a random question. I've known him for many, many years. I know he does all the Jesus debunking scholarly stuff. I'll be honest, when it comes to that stuff, I don't have an opinion because you know what I talk about on this channel. I don't talk about it very much. So I don't know. The stuff he cares about as an atheist and the stuff I care about as an atheist, that Venn diagram really doesn't overlap. So I don't say this in a mean way. I don't think about him much because it doesn't come up in the stuff I cover. That's it. All right, I'm jumping to another story. I swear they're shorter after this. All right. I'm excited to share this one with you. So you may have heard this last week. Navy Secretary John Phelan was basically booted from his job by the Trump administration, presumably because he had some clashes with Pete Hegseth. This is Phelan right here. And yeah, he's leaving in the latest departure of a top defense leader. It was a little weird because why would you fire the Navy secretary when we are currently at war against Iran and the whole battle revolves around the Strait of Hormuz? Why would you get rid of the Navy secretary in the middle of all that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Not that Phelan was any good at his job, his credentials to be Navy Secretary is that he donated money to Donald Trump and he founded an investment firm. So, like, no one's losing sleep over this guy not in his job. But the reason I bring that up is because he quickly got replaced by another guy, the acting Navy Secretary, and that guy is somehow even worse. It's this dude right here. His name is Hung Cao, C-A-O. And Hung Cao is an anti-vax conspiracy theorist who has tried to be in Republican politics for a really long time. So, like, in 2022, he ran for Congress against a Democrat. And in that campaign, he compared abortion to the Nazi regime. He said the Nazis did this. They'll take Jewish babies and just take the legs and just smash the babies and kill them. You think that can't happen in this country? Which apparently is a reference to abortion. So basically, he didn't win that race because everyone's like, oh, this guy's crazy. And then in 2024, he's like, you know what my problem was? I should have aimed higher. So he ran for Senate to try to unseat Tim Kaine, who was a former vice presidential candidate, and he lost that race. Hung Cao lost that race too. So this guy has a whole history of failing upward, as is the case with many Republicans in politics. And so they made him a Navy official in this Trump administration, and now he is the acting Navy Secretary. And because he's the acting Navy Secretary, people started sharing this clip from an interview he did in 2023 with Christian nationalist Sean Foyt. And I'm going to basically, I'll play this clip for you, but he's referencing the city of Monterey, California, which he says is a hellhole for a bunch of reasons. But let me play this for you, then we'll talk.
Again, it's, we can't let it turn like this. There's a place in Monterey, California called Lovers Point.
Yeah.
The original name was Lovers of Christ Point, but now it's become, they took out the Christ, it's Lovers Point, and it's really, Monterey is a very dark place now.
Yeah.
A lot of witchcraft and the,
Right.
the Wiccan community has really taken over there. And we can't let that happen in Virginia. Virginia is...
Monterey, California, he says, has been taken over by witches, and they removed Jesus. What did they say? Lover of Christ Point. They took Christ out of the name of that location. Like, all of that is bullshit, by the way. But his theory is if you support him, no more Wiccan takeover of all the stuff. Okay. For what it's worth, the Monterey County Historical Society says that Lovers of Jesus Point, which is the actual original name of that place, not Lovers of Christ Point, it was named that way in the 1870s because the guy who started it wanted to create a little enclave just for Christians and it wasn't even in Monterey. It was in nearby Pacific Grove. So he got that wrong too. But later on, when they were like, you can't just build a little city for Christians, this is America, then they secularized it. And by the way, he acted like it was a hellhole. I'm looking at this website for Lovers Point Park and Beach. This place looks great. It is chilly and rainy outside of Chicago where I'm at. I would go here in a heartbeat, witches or no witches. One local media outlet asked somebody, hey, were there witches around here? And the dude said, there used to be a witches meetup group, but they haven't met in a couple of years. So, okay, what the hell was Hung Cao talking about? The one thing that he has going for him is not his insane beliefs. It's that he actually does have some military experience. I believe he was in the Navy for quite some time. The fear, though, is that as acting Navy Secretary, and if he is confirmed, there's no reason to think he's not going to use this platform to spread even more Christian lies, because that's what everyone in this administration does the second they get a little ounce of power. And it's truly incredible that if you think about who's in the Trump administration right now, you have a guy who recently said he teleported to a Waffle House. You have a guy who cut the penis off a dead raccoon for fun. And that guy's in charge of health. You have a guy who quoted Pulp Fiction because he thought it was a Bible verse, and that guy's in charge of the entire Defense Department. So I will say that Hung Kao's claim that witches took over a city, even though they don't really exist in that city, and it wasn't even that city, that's kind of the least insane thing that we're going to find in this administration. But as one person told me, maybe running the Navy is perfect for him because he's a big fan of crone warfare. Well done. Well done. I do have to share one more thing with you, which is that Hung Kao, his wife, may be even more insane than he is because she's an all-out racist. April Lakata Cow. She had a blog, a conservative blog many years ago. And on there, she said things like Barack Obama needs to, quote, stay in Africa. He was not living in Africa for much of his life. She also said, peace those Muslims, like get rid of them, kill them. Peace those Muslims, she said. She also said black Obama administration officials were racist. And she shared stories from InfoWars. So this woman she's like the Ginny Thomas of the Navy now, if this guy gets confirmed. Just a deranged conspiracy lunatic. I don't know. Is there anyone in this administration who isn't a nut job, or at least surrounded by people who aren't even worse? I have no idea. The only qualification it takes to run a $1 trillion agency in this government right now is you got to believe in Jesus. You got to make sure ethics never take priority. It's always about loyalty to Trump. And you need to have a nonstop history of batshit insane things you have said that live on the internet for all time. One last thing. When this guy talked about witches taking over that city, it brought to mind, do you remember, if you are old like me, do you remember in 2010, there was a Senate candidate from, I believe, Delaware, Christine O'Donnell, and Bill Maher, the comedian, he had played clips of when Christine O'Donnell appeared on his Politically Incorrect show years earlier, where she said she had dabbled in witchcraft or something like that. And it got so in the news that Christine O'Donnell put out a commercial basically saying, "Hi, everyone, I am not a witch." And it was the greatest political ad of all time. And then she lost. And no one's seen her for like several years now. She's alive. I just don't know what she's up to anymore. Okay, I will stop there. What questions we got for this story? Wow, calling out the Wiccan by name. Actual religious discrimination there. Seriously, maybe the Trump administration needs a task force for that. But sorry, they're too busy making up things about Christians. All right, I'm going to jump to another story here. One moment. Okay. We got to talk about this guy right here. He is a Christian nationalist preacher named Joel Webbin. And the reason we got to talk about it involves the Southern Poverty Law Center. So I don't know if you've seen the news about the Southern Poverty Law Center in recent weeks, but basically the Trump administration is trying to shut down one of the right's biggest enemies over the years. And so the Justice Department just got an indictment against the Southern Poverty Law Center. And here's the argument that Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, made at a press conference. At a press conference earlier this week, acting attorney general Todd Blanche focused largely on the wire fraud charges, saying that between 2014 through 2023, the Southern Poverty Law Center paid at least $3 million to 8 different informants who were affiliated with groups such as the KKK, National Socialist Movement, and the Aryan Nation. To prove wire fraud, the government must show at trial that the SPLC intentionally tried to fleece its donors and that those misstatements or omissions of fact were material. Sounds serious, but here's what they're basically saying. The SPLC's most famous thing that they do is that they've created a database of hate groups. And so, for example, if you are an anti-LGBTQ hate group, what does that mean? Well, it does not mean you oppose same-sex marriage or you think homosexuality is a sin. That's not what it means. Otherwise, like every conservative Christian church, every Catholic church in the country would be on the list. But that's not considered hate. What the SPLC says is hate is when you go so far beyond that and you spread lies. Like I'm making this up, but like if you get near a gay person, you'll get HIV, or that they spread diseases to other people. When you are making up horrible lies like that about a group of people, that's where it crosses over into hate. And so when the SPLC says this is a hate group, it's not because they're on the right. It's because there is documentation that they don't just lie, but spread malicious lies about whatever group it is they hate. And if you go to the SPLC's website, you could see the list. You could see the quotations they are talking about. And that's why they're on there. But every time one of these right-wing groups becomes a hate group, they act like they are targets of Christian persecution, even though most Christian groups are not ever going to be on that list. So that's why the right hates the SPLC. Well, the reason they got indicted is, according to Todd Blanche and according to the right, they said the SPLC claims it's stopping all these hate groups, but for many years now, they've been giving money to those hate groups. They've been propping up those hate groups. So they're like double dealing here. They tell their donors one thing, they get money from those donors, and then they use it to do the exact opposite. That is seriously the claim being made by the right. And the other thing they also said, because this is the wire fraud, is that when they paid people in these groups, they didn't say it was coming from the SPLC. They lied to the bank. They said it was coming from a different group so that when the money was transferred, it was like hiding information from the banks, and that's wire fraud. So those are the allegations, the main allegations against the SPLC. So what's actually happening? Here's what's actually happening. Let's suppose, and again, I'm just riffing here for a second. Let's suppose you're the SPLC and you find out there is a white nationalist group that is really dangerous, not just racist, obviously, but they're plotting to do some really horrible things. You want to know what they're going to do. You want to know when they're going to do it. How do you get that information? Well, what if you found out there was a member of that group who was suddenly thinking, I don't agree with this stuff. I want to get out of here. I don't like what they're doing. I disagree with it. Well, if you're the SPLC, you could go to that person and say, hey, we heard that you don't actually believe these people. What if we paid you a fee, stay in there, go to their meetings, and then tell us everything you learn. Tell us what they're plotting. Tell us what they're up to. And by the way, don't just tell us, because we are going to pass that along to the FBI so that if they are planning to do something horrible, a terrorist plot, the FBI can put a stop to it. And they're not just saying put yourself in danger by being a double agent. We're giving you money. We're giving you an incentive to keep doing that. Now, would you say, if that were happening, would you say the SPLC is giving money to the hate group? I don't think so. They're giving money to their informant on the inside who can get them insider information. And that is a good investment of money if I want to stop what that group is doing. That's what the SPLC was doing. And they have said, yeah, we told the FBI about this. They knew what we were doing. We were working together. which is another point in the SPLC's favor. They weren't even being shady about this. And the third thing is they said, let's say we have this informant on the inside and we want to pay them to keep doing this. If we put a direct deposit in their bank account, but the direct deposit says, here's your salary from the Southern Poverty Law Center, what if that guy is being tracked by the group? That's going to look really bad. So they set up different outlets, different companies, and they paid those people through their shell companies. And as far as I know, the FBI was aware of this part of the plot too. So were they actually lying to the banks? Not with the FBI's permission, they weren't. So that's why the whole SPLC thing is ridiculous to me. But that has taken, like, the idea that the SPLC has always been shady. Over the past week, the indictment has led a lot of people on the right to say, see, I told you they were bad people at the SPLC. I told you we were not a hate group. Here's a tweet put out by one of those right-wing conspiracy theorists. Charlottesville was staged by the SPLC. What? No. The Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, the one with the tiki torches, that was a real thing that happened. And the SPLC happened to know somebody working in conjunction with the organizers of that event. That was one of their informants. So they knew what was going to happen. That's like one dude or maybe a couple of informants or something. That rally still happened. Heather Heyer was still killed. Like, it's what this guy is saying, that the SPLC has basically staged right-wing hate crimes and stuff, that they staged January 6th, that all these hateful groups, it was all a lie because racism isn't real. Like, that's the narrative running through the right now. You get what I'm saying? So these people are deranged. They don't understand the nuance here. But I want to show you what Joel Webbin said in response to all this, because this is the part where it gets a little crazy. Oh, I did want to point out, even a white nationalist, a well-known racist named Jared Taylor, he said the indictment, and I'm quoting here, seems hokied up to me. Even he wasn't buying that the SPLC was making all this shit up. So Joel Webbin, he is the pastor of a Covenant Bible Church in Georgetown, Texas, not too far from Austin. He is a guy who said that, like, when you hear rape accusations, he believes a lot of them are false. And he said the way to stop false allegations like that is if we publicly execute a few women. That's a thing he said. He also said this before. Let me show you this. When faced with the choice between going to a black doctor or a white doctor, Christian nationalist pastor Joel Webbin chose the white doctor because, quote, if there's a chance that one of them was not qualified and was given a free pass, it'd be the black guy. Here's another thing he said. This is also from Right Wing Watch. That same year, Webbin urged white parents to have the talk with their children about avoiding black people. Oh, here's another. Just look at the headline. Joel Webbin doesn't want his daughter to marry a black man. Oh, look, there's another headline. Joel Webbin insists it's fair to say all black people are impulsive and lazy and that all Jews are subversive. So this guy is just a flat out racist. So what did he say in response to the SPLC indictment? He said that it is proof racism isn't real. Because every time they said there was these like anti-black hate groups, clearly the SPLC was making everything up as if the SPLC was founded in like the 1970s. According to Joel Webbin, I guess, racism only started in the 1970s and it was a figment of their imagination when starting in 1970, whatever. But let me play you this clip from Webbin.
To me, it's like it's so ironic. It's so clear that America does not have a racist problem, at least in terms of like pure, baseless, mindless hatred towards minority people.
It's more toxic empathy. I think we have a toxic empathy problem.
Well, and that's my point. That's why it's lucrative. White people in America are are, if anything, I think, too trusting, too gullible, toxic empathy. White people in America are like, you know what? I know that this will kill my grandchildren, but can we just import half of the country of Haiti, just to be nice? Like, so not only is racism non-existent, if anything, we could probably use a little bit more racism in America.
We could probably use a little bit more racism in America, says white nationalist preacher Joel Webbin. Yeah, that's what Christianity is to these guys. So when Right Wing Watch posted that clip online, Joel Webbin responded to it, and this is what he said. Guess I should have been more clear. America is absolutely racist against white people. And he capitalized the white for good measure. So, like, by the way, I see this in the comments. Did that other guy say that the real problem was toxic empathy? Yeah, that's very much a thing on the right. It's Allie Beth Stuckey's thing that the problem with America is we're too nice. So, yay, Donald Trump, because he's an asshole to everybody, I guess. Whatever. So why is Joel Webbin and people like him making these kinds of comments? I think it's because if you're a conservative and you can convince people that racism isn't real, and this indictment against SPLC, which targets racist hate groups, proves in their mind that racism doesn't exist. If you can convince conservatives that racism is over or never existed, then all the policies or court decisions that harm marginalized groups can be reframed or justified, right? Because it's just neutral. The Supreme Court this week decided Black people in southern states cannot choose their own representatives, which is like the culmination of the civil rights movement, because white people deserve to be able to box them out. If you don't believe racism exists, but reverse racism exists, then you totally are fine with what the Supreme Court did. This is part of the strategy. You got to downplay the fact that racism is a problem, because if it doesn't exist, you can be as racist as you want, and it's not really an issue, right? So when Webbin says a little bit more racism would be beneficial, he's just trying to normalize his own racism. And look, if he was one fringe guy with no audience, maybe we forget about all this, but he's not. His church is not huge, but his online audience is. And he's not alone. There are lots of dudes just like him. They're all pretty much interchangeable. These white conservative Christian nationalists, they've all spent years minimizing systemic racism. They want to rewrite American history so kids never learn about racism. We see that in red states like Texas. They try to reframe civil rights advocacy as the real threat. They do this stuff all the time. And it's successful in red states. And it's widespread in their social media bubbles too. So that's why you got to counter this anywhere you see it. Online, through podcasts, social media, whatever. Push back against it as much as you can. All right, what questions we got here? Fuck, I didn't understand that's what the Supreme Court thing did. Yeah, basically, there were districts where the Civil Rights Movement, the Voting Rights Act said, you know, there are a lot of Black people in this city, like Memphis, Tennessee, and they deserve to be able to pick their own elected representatives. So Memphis had a House seat. What are they doing in Tennessee right now? They want to redraw the map, split up Memphis into a few different parts so that a few Black people are mixed in with districts with a whole lot of white conservatives so that, sure, Black people can vote, but ultimately their vote's not going to matter because they're being drowned out by white conservatives. And if all the red states do this, and just today, Louisiana announced it's going to stop elections that have already started. They've already cast votes in their primary election. The governor of Louisiana said, we're going to stop this right now in the middle of the race. We're going to redraw the maps so that Black people have less power. And then we're going to start over so that only white people can really win, realistically win. Yeah, that's what the Supreme Court just sanctioned. And by the way, how do you counter that? Every blue state, I live in Illinois, it's like 14-3 Democrats when it comes to the House. We could redraw the maps so that the southern half of Illinois is basically shoved into a part of Chicago. And then those white conservatives in Southern Illinois would never get to choose a representative that is like racist, which is what they do right now. Mary Miller, look her up. Illinois could do that because there's nothing that says you got to clump people together by their like types. They should. Illinois, every blue state should gerrymander the hell out of their entire state, make sure no Republican wins a single seat. And again, that's the game Republicans are playing. I think gerrymandering is wrong. But if that's what Republicans are doing, you got to fight fire with fire. And until Republicans say we're going to pass a law to get rid of gerrymandering nationwide, Democrats need to play this game better. What is the rationale for the SCOTUS decision? They're racist. That's the rationale. They basically say by creating these districts for Black people, you're basically justifying racism, even if it helps Black people. And we ought to live in a colorblind society. So the way to fix it is by not helping Black people specifically. That's their rationale. But also, it's really Alito's a white supremacist. And he's like, what can I do? Hey, Clarence, help me out here. And so all 6 of the conservatives said, yeah, we don't want Black people to have power. So they decided to do this ruling. Toxic empathy is something fascist hate mongers say so they can hate good people. Yeah, I mean, no one's ever accused people on the right of being too nice. They're always assholes, but they're trying to justify why they're always assholes. And it's a lot easier to say, well, empathy is toxic, and I'm just trying to push back against that. So that's why I can be a jerk to everybody. All right, I got a couple more quick ones for you. I know I'm running late here. All right, I'm going to start this one up in just a sec. There was a very recent analysis done by the Pew Research Center that I wanted to share with you because it involves the Catholic Church. And I found it really interesting because what they found, based on a lot of survey data, is that more people are leaving the Catholic Church than entering the Catholic Church. And this is happening in country after country. And they have a phrase for this. I've discussed this on the channel before. It's called religious switching. And what religious switching is you were raised in one religion, but as you grew up, you got out of it and became something else. And what we've seen over the past couple of decades is people who are born in the United States anyway, people are born into some kind of Christianity, but a lot of them decide as they grow up, they don't want to be Christian. Maybe they become an atheist. Maybe they become none of the above. I just don't want to be part of organized religion. Rarely they'll go from like Catholic to Muslim. Doesn't happen often, but that's still religious switching. So the question is, how many people are leaving a religion and entering Christianity or Catholicism specifically, right? And one of the reasons I'm fascinated by this topic is because historically, one of the reasons religion is so powerful is there is an underlying assumption to religion, which is that if you raise your kids in a particular religion, if you indoctrinate those kids from a young age, they will stay in that religion forever. That's the thinking a lot of parents have. Why do I got to take my kids to Catholic church even if I'm not that religious? Well, they got to learn ethics and values and go to CCD class or whatever. They got to learn that stuff, and then they will be good and ethical and Catholic forever. But obviously, that's not what happens in reality. And yet that myth persists. Like the Duggar family, forget the arrests. Why was the Duggar family, why did they have so many kids? The thinking, the mentality there is that if you have so many kids and you raise them as Christians, they're going to grow up, they're going to get married, they're going to have a dozen kids of their own each. And after a few generations, you've created this huge army of Christians and you have outbred everybody else, and your religion will take over the world. That's seriously the thinking behind the Duggar family, behind the Quiverful movement. But as you probably know from experience, that's really not how it happens, how it works in real life. Because as people get older, they have these pesky thoughts. And if you're allowed to think for yourself, a lot of people are like, that religion I was raised with, I don't believe that anymore. And I don't think I believe in God anymore. And I am guessing most of you watching this right now grew up in a religion, came to that realization that you don't believe in this shit at some point in your life, and now you are not religious. And this happens in conservative families, Christian families, all the religions. It happens all the time. But that means there's pressure to keep you indoctrinated as long as possible. It helps that the internet is out there, so you realize you're not alone. It helps that there's less stigma today to being non-religious, right? But that's why I wanted to bring up this chart. I want you to look at this from the Pew Research Center right here. So just look at this picture. In most countries, more people have left Catholicism since childhood than joined. So they surveyed adults in these countries, and look at the very top. Spain is at the very top. 34% of all adults in Spain say they were raised Catholic, but they have since left Catholicism. 34% of all adults in the country. Meanwhile, only 2% of adults in Spain say they were not raised in Catholicism and have joined it. Holy crap, if you talk about religion as like a sieve that could be leaking, the Catholic Church is leaking. They are losing people a hell of a lot faster than they are bringing in. And this is true for all of these countries here. Chile, France, Brazil, Colombia. If you scroll down at right here, we get the United States. 13% of people were raised Catholic but have left it. Only 2% have come in. Even if you go down all the way to all the countries, there's only a couple of examples where the influx is greater than the exodus. But even then, look at Hungary. For 2% are leaving, but 5% are entering. That's a very small number. And by the way, that's before Viktor Orban was ousted. So maybe that's going to have an effect. Maybe people don't feel compelled to join the Catholic Church, right? So fascinating. All these countries, the Catholic Church is losing people. Another thing that's interesting, it kind of helps to know how Catholic were these countries to begin with, because that also gives us a better picture of what's going on here. And thankfully, the Pew Research Center had that too. Like Poland, 96% of people were raised Catholic. Everybody in Poland is raised Catholic, and 92% of them are still Catholic as adults. 4% have left. Very small number. In Poland, it's not as porous. They're not leaking as much. But look at Italy. I mean, the Vatican City. Vatican City is inside of Italy. But look at that. 89% of Italians are raised Catholic, but only 67% are still Catholic as adults. 22% have left. And if you go through this list, other than Poland, these countries that are majority Catholic, look at the light blue. Look at how many people are leaving the Catholic Church. Like, again, there's Hungary, exception to the rule. They're not losing a lot of people. And I do wonder how much Orban and his authoritarianism have to do with that. But in all these other countries, the Catholic Church is losing all these people in light blue. That is fascinating. That is fascinating to me. So why is this happening? I mean, the analysis does not answer that question. They're just here to present data. But I would argue a lot of this is the Catholic Church shooting itself in the foot. You could blame the sex scandals, the hypocrisy, the desperate attempt by conservative Catholics, at least in the US, to worship Donald Trump and abandon Jesus. You could say it's easy access to material that helps you abandon your religion. Maybe you saw J.D. Vance converted to Catholicism and you're like, fuck this religion. I want nothing to do with it. Or maybe over time, the Catholic Church's dogmatic positions against birth control, against same-sex marriage, things they still cling to, where you're just like, I'm not being part of a religion that is that promotes these bigoted views. Any number of those reasons might do it. Now, you might think, hey, Pope Leo is now the head of the church. He seems to be really popular. I believe some poll recently said he's the most popular guy globally speaking. So maybe that'll bring people back into the church. Maybe. But I would argue Pope Francis was the head of the church for the past decade before that. He was very popular globally. And all of these numbers I'm showing you took place during his reign. So I don't see how Pope Leo's popularity is going to change these numbers at all, because the church hasn't really changed in that regard. So I don't know about that. Now, the one thing I would say to counter everything I'm telling you, because this all seems very exciting if you're non-religious, is that this is a Catholic phenomenon specifically. Because if you look at Protestantism, evangelicals, Southern Baptists, Protestant Christianity is not seeing the same kind of losses across the board. And look at this survey right here, or look at this graph. Protestantism has seen net gains from religious switching almost as often as net losses. So if you look at like Sweden, the UK, the US, yeah, people are leaving their Christian churches a lot more than they are entering them. So this is all great news if you're an atheist. But look at this. In other countries, they are actually gaining members. And I know this is like Latin America, this is Africa that we're looking at here, Philippines as well. But there are more people joining these churches. Look at Brazil. Brazil has a huge influx of people into Protestant churches relative to them leaving the church. So some religions are gaining ground, right? So the question then is, what's going to happen in the years to come? Are these trends going to continue? Or are people who switch to Protestantism, are they going to eventually leave that religion for the same reason people are leaving Catholicism? It's too early to tell. But I think there is a broader takeaway here, which is religious institutions no longer have the luxury of assuming permanence. They don't get to assume that if your family raises kids inside of a church, they're going to stay that way when they're older. I think people around the world are beginning to realize people switch religions when they're older. And when you realize you don't have to be trapped in a religion when you grow up, and especially when the beliefs you were raised with are now indefensible, it's okay when you leave. And when you see other people doing it and they're fine, it makes it easier for you to leave too. And I think right now, the Catholic Church, they seem to be hemorrhaging credibility faster than they can replace it. So I don't know, maybe this is an existential crisis for the Catholic Church. We can only hope. But yeah, I will leave it at that. What questions we got here? Apparently, ex-Christian atheists are generally more likely to be further left, yes, than raised atheist people. It's kind of weird to be glad for the religious trauma because yay, empathy. Yeah, this is a study that was just published recently. I think I saw an article about it, but this is true. What they found is that if you were raised in religion and left it, you're probably more progressive. You're probably more to the left than people who were raised atheists. And I think part of that is if you were raised atheist, you probably never had to personally struggle and come to terms with your old beliefs and what you really believe now. Like there is comfort in just being right from the start. Then someone like me, maybe like you, who had to at some point grapple with all those religious things you were raised to believe. And when you've thought about, like, what do I think about homosexuality? What do I think about abortion? And you come to realize, oh, like there's absolutely no reason to oppose it. It is, you can find it in nature. There's nothing shameful about that stuff. It's a lot easier to agree with progressive values. So I intuitively, that's what I would have guessed, but it was nice to see a study about that. All right, I got one last story for you. I think this is a quick one, but I wanted to share it with you because it's just fun, amusing for me. Give me 1 second here. All right. Man, there is Christian hypocrisy, and then there is writing a book about the importance of marriage and biblical marriage and being true to your spouse, only to get arrested because it turns out you're secretly married to multiple people, because that's just what happened to this guy right here. His name is Leslie Williams, and apparently in 2017, he wrote this book right here. It's called Love Her Like This. I just want to point out there are only 2 clouds there. Loving her has never been deeper. Okay, we could workshop the subtitle there. But that book, according to Amazon, that is all about the type of love a man should have for his wife. It's an advice book. It talks about common issues that might come up during marriage. Also, he talks about the type of issues that have the potential to destroy the sacred relationship between a husband and wife. So it was a self-published book. That's fine. He gave marital advice to whoever was reading it. And all of this was an extension of his ministry. He called it the Leslie Williams Ministries. And his whole goal with his ministry is to help people strengthen their relationship with God, each other, and with new disciple recruits. But he got in trouble. He got in trouble this week because he got arrested after an officer found that he was wanted in the state of Georgia. Leslie Williams is in Florida, but the officer was like, wait a minute, I don't know what they use, but my information is telling me you're wanted in another state. So the Florida cop arrested him, and he's currently waiting to be extradited to Georgia. And so the reason he was arrested, according to the police report, is he is being charged with bigamy. He has at least one other wife somewhere on record. And the law says you're not allowed to have more than one wife. If you are married, even if you get separated, you got to tell the courts. You can't just walk away and then go get married to someone else. There's some paperwork involved in that. And apparently he did not fill that stuff out. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. I do not know what the issue is here. Does he know he's married to someone else right now? Did he think he got divorced, but he really didn't? And so when he got remarried, he didn't realize the paperwork had not been filled out? I have no idea. He has not talked about this yet. I'm not confusing this guy with a fundamentalist Mormon or something who has many wives. I don't think that's what this is. I can't tell if this is a paperwork error or this guy just had a secret life. Don't know which one it is. But I did see that this is one of the funniest Facebook posts I have ever seen. This is from December of 2025. You got to love this. He posts on Facebook, married to Cindy. Hey, he got married to someone new. Look at all the likes. Look at all the comments. Everyone's wishing him congratulations. And then this person chimes in. Wow, I thought you were already married. Congratulations. I don't know who this person is, but she knows something. So I don't know. I'm kind of wondering why police even knew this guy needed to be on their radar. Why would people even? I wonder if this Facebook post was it. There's also this very interesting thing he posted in May of 2024. Listen, did I go down a rabbit hole on this man's Facebook page? Maybe. Do I have better things to do with my time? Clearly, I don't. But he wrote this in May of 2024. My ex-wife falsely accused me of domestic violence 4 different times in her injunction with the court. So there is a court involved. She had no dates and no time supporting her false accusations because it didn't happen. Look, I will stop here. I am not interested in litigating what this guy may or may not have done. I don't know. I honestly, I'm not getting in the middle of their dispute. What I find interesting is he calls her his ex-wife. So apparently he thought he was divorced at the time. There was a court involved, so he knows how that courts exist. But I wonder when he wrote this, was she his ex-wife? Or did he just think she was his ex-wife? I don't know, but he got married within a year and a half of that post. So that's also interesting. I don't know. Um, Fox News posted an article about this, and as you would expect, they don't really care about the nuance. This is the headline: Pastor known for marriage advice arrested at rumored swingers community, accused of having multiple wives. And you know they love that rumored swingers community bit here. What's that all about? Well, this guy is from Florida and he lives in a place called The Villages. And if you look up The Villages online, it's a famously large retirement community. It is also famously conservative. So like when the No Kings rallies were happening, there is a contingent of people in The Villages who protested and had their signs, and it's awesome to see. But the reason it sometimes makes the news is because, like, guys, even in The Villages, they're participating in the No Kings protests. So this guy lives in The Villages, huge conservative retirement community. But as the way Fox puts it, if I can show this to you down here at the bottom of the article, here we go. According to the Associated Press, The Villages is one of the largest retirement communities in the world, located outside of Orlando, where long-running rumors of swingers, public sexual encounters, and unusually high rates of sexually transmitted diseases have surfaced over the years. I honestly don't know if there's any truth to a lot of that. I think it's just more salacious details. But I will say, listen, if it's a large retirement community, yeah, I'm not surprised if people are playing with each other, because guess what? You're not having any more babies. I honestly don't know if there are high rates of sexually transmitted diseases. I think that's just a rumor that started. I don't know where that's coming from. There's one other thing I had to show you, if my computer will allow me to show it to you. So while I'm waiting there we go. While I'm waiting for this to work again, in Georgia, if you are convicted of bigamy, you could face between 1 to 10 years in prison. Who knows what's going to happen with Leslie Williams? But I will say, until that happens, until he has his day in court, maybe the one thing we can count on is that his book is going to get a lot of sales. Maybe he gets that publicity boost that he's been hoping for. And I did appreciate this one review that was left this week on his Amazon page. 5 stars. I was skeptical at first, but after finding out you had multiple wives, you must know what you're talking about, sir. You just got yourself another customer. Beautiful. Beautiful. Chef's kiss. Brilliant trolling. I love it. Like, it's so easy to crack jokes about this whole situation, but I think if there is a serious thing you could say about it, this guy didn't just not live up to his own ideals. He built a whole ministry around these ideals, and then he broke them. He broke his own rules. And that's not that different from, like, we've made fun of them on this channel in the past. There are young white evangelical women who grew up in purity culture, and now they are like 3 days married, and they're like, I'm going to give sex advice to young women. It's like, I don't think you know anything. What are you doing? You can't pretend to be an expert on something when you're not living it in practice. And there are so many conservative Christians who want to pretend they are biblical authorities on something. It's like, I don't know that you're practicing what you preach. And this guy's living proof of that. Like, I don't know. Even if this is an extreme situation, it's not that weird. We are used to seeing Christians who obsess over other people's relationships, who always have thoughts about what constitutes non-biblical marriages and why you're sinning in your relationship. At the same time, they're the ones breaking their own rules, and they hope no one pays attention to it. So it's not that this guy's uniquely corrupt. It's that he's part of a culture where you just kind of expect these rules to be broken. And it's only weird because it's so salacious that everyone's picking up on this guy's story. But it's not that weird. All right, I will stop there. Just had to bring that up. Fun story to share, because why not? What questions we got here? Some men have more than one wife, but they don't get caught. Railroad men or traveling men mostly. Are they writing books about how you should be in a monogamous marriage? I don't know. Hey, if everybody's consenting adults, no judgment. I assume we were talking about swinging in the villages, in which case, right there with you. However, if they are conservatives and they're voting for like the family values crowd, then I think it's fair to call them out for their hypocrisy. Otherwise, man, go have fun. You're retired. Go do whatever it is you do. It was awesome to see some of them demonstrate on No King's Day. Yeah, when you see the images, I think Maddow had them on her show, like images from the villages. You see them online. It's like, cool. I'm glad that even in a conservative area, I love seeing No King's pictures from like red states. It is so awesome. And you just hope that's just a small portion of the people who are pissed off right now. Emma, what are you doing tomorrow on May Day Strong? Right. It's the next protest of sorts where people are basically striking from work or school if possible. I'll be honest, because I work in front of my computer all the time and I don't have a formal like 9-to-5 job, I wasn't planning on doing anything differently. I don't know if I'm supposed to if my work is commenting on this stuff online, but I would love to hear from people about what they're doing. I have seen stories of some schools where kids are walking out, where staffers decided to take a day off or they voted to take a day off so that they could participate in that. Honestly, whatever it is people are doing, if it helps raise awareness of the fact that people are pissed off right now and voting in November might be the best way we have of trying to bring a sense of responsibility and accountability and normalcy to this country. I mean, whatever it takes, all for it. Were you a Boy Scout? Ooh, I was a Cub Scout for the first couple of years. Religion was there, but like I didn't think about it. It just wasn't a factor. I think I just stopped because I didn't care anymore. I can't remember if I like transferred schools and then it's like, oh, my friends aren't in it, so I'll stop. But I was a Cub Scout for a few years, and I just never got into like the Boy Scout, Eagle Scout sort of thing. All right, we are good. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Den. It's good to have you back, Den. Remember, you can always support this channel. Go to patreon.com/Hemant. You can subscribe to the newsletter. I have a fun story I have not talked about yet that I will have tomorrow for you. Go subscribe. You will get it in your mailbox tomorrow. All right, that's it. I'll see you next week. I should be back on Thursday. See you then.